Hey friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. And you're looking at executive producer Hawk. Yeah, she's hard at work keeping an eye on us here. She's a good girl, yeah. Yeah, she's a good girl. Yeah, she's in a tired mood today, but she's doing well. And we're here tonight, going to do a segment on missing people. And we're going to talk about some outstanding, interesting cases that have come up that we just found within the last month doing more research. Thanks, Huck. But talk about those later. In the meantime, I want to tell you that the movie Missing 411: The UFO Connection, you can watch it on Amazon, Vimeo, iTunes. Still doing really well. I've got some comments for you here, and away we go. Hey Dave, I wanted to thank you for the speedy service. I ordered your new movie on the 5th and got it on the 7th. My friend and I watched it together today on the 8th. Wow. We both enjoyed it very much. We are still digesting it, and I'm sure we will discuss it on a long drive to the beach tomorrow. Lucky us. A couple of things I want to tell people is the distribution system that we have set up internally is pretty darn good. And there's some things online that some people have said some real disparaging things about everything we do, so I don't care much about that, but outright lies I do. We always get the orders out within 2 business days, same as Amazon, and we take a lot of pride in getting them, almost all of them out the next day. So we work hard at that. Anyhow, we're both from PA and have read a couple of your books. My friend Alice wrote her 1969 senior college term paper on Project Blue Book. And we have both seen the color changing star here in Florida recently. I've had a recent strange event and started to write you about it, then started to write Harvey Proud about it as it concerns a Native American artifact. I'll try to write you again. I'm not sure why I can't seem to finish the story and send it. We both thought the movie was very well made and much new information was great. It was great that you showed the documents. We want to go back and read them through. The interview at the end was mind-blowing. Definitely have to watch it again. Thanks for your great work. Again, the most common comment about the movie is people have watched it at least 2 to 4 times. That's an extreme compliment, so thank you. And, you know, as I've stated, that this was, by a factor of 10, the hardest project I've ever done in my life. And it wasn't just for one reason either. It was 7 or 8 reasons that seemed overwhelming while we were going through the process. And I know in these times that people have gone through very challenging moments in life. I get that. I really do. What I want you to understand is, and I suppose this was even a life lesson for me as I was going through this process of this movie. I'm one of these guys that doesn't give up easily about anything. And I honestly had 3 of those absolute done moments with this. Now in this movie, the only commonality between me, or this movie and the previous 2 movies, was me. That's it. And that was the hard thing. is transitioning and going through multiple crews for a multitude of reasons. Some people didn't want to work hard, some people were lazy, some people didn't do good at their work. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but the reality is that in the end, through struggle and strife, through sadness and horror, the movie got out. When I was in my master's degree program, we had to write a thesis paper at the end. And it was laid on us at the beginning that this was going to be the hardest thing you ever did in your life. And no, it was hard. It was hard. And it went through several renditions. But honestly, nothing compares to this. Missing 411, the UFO Connection. That movie right there. I had nightmares about it sometimes. That's how bad it was. Talked to a lot of people how to overcome some of my grief about it. It was hard. But anyhow, I appreciate all your kind comments. Really do. And thank you. Next comment. You know, I beg my wife to watch movies or sit under the stars with me, to no luck. The last 3 movies we actually sat and watched together were yours. I'm actually watching the first one, Missing 411, again now, and one thing that has always really bothered me about the number 1 was the 2 fishermen who had seen the little boy. I guess the little boy asked if there were bears around. I mean, how into fishing could someone get for 2 grown men to not question why such a tiny little guy is all by himself? 100% agree. Angie and I have talked about this 1,000 times. That was Alan Adadero's son, Jared. I'm sure Alan asked himself 1,000 times, hey guys, why didn't you grab my son? And I'm sure that those men, they have to live with themselves too, knowing that they let that boy walk into oblivion. Now, after I wrote that story in that book, met with Alan many times, I've told this story probably 50 times. But Angie and I were in an area probably no more than 5 miles from where Jared disappeared. And we were hiking right on the fringe of Rocky Mountain National Park. And we're walking around this very, very rural lake. No, we hadn't seen anybody. And we'd seen a lot of tracks of moose and elk. And maybe we had even seen a mountain lion track or 2, because there was a lot of mud right near this lake. And as I'm walking and I'm kind of in front of Angie, she taps me on the back and says, Dave, stop. She never does that. I thought, oh, whoa, okay. I stop. She says, turn around. I turn around. There's this little 6-year-old boy standing next to Angie. I said, hi. And the boy goes, hi. I go, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm out here with my family. I go, where's your family? Oh, they're back there. I said, oh. Can you take me to them? And he goes, yeah, sure. So Angie and I walk with this little boy at least 100 yards through the woods. We get to this little tiny, looks like a day campsite. Some chairs sat out in a little tent. And there's a woman sitting in the chair with a little girl near her. And a guy is kind of laying in the tent. It looks like he's kind of reading. And I walk up and I go, hey, this your son? And they go, oh yeah. I go, yeah, he's a really nice boy. And I said, you know, that there have been kids that have disappeared within a couple miles of right here and never been found, which was true. And I said, there's a lot of bad things in these woods, and you might want to keep your son real close. Oh, we didn't know, and they get all defensive, and I could tell it wasn't going to go well. And I said, hey, Just wanted to make sure everything's great. Nice to meet you guys. And we walked away. What it's an example of is people are oblivious to the dangers out there. It's almost a guarantee that within 2 or 3 miles of where we were, there was at least a mountain lion and a couple of bear. They're all over out there. And really, the more dangerous animal is a moose. And if you see a moose, you be very careful. Back away. Get away from it. They can kill you. And this little boy was no more than 3 or 4 feet from the edge of the lake. Talk about it all the time. There was no way in the world we were walking away from that little boy and leave him alone in the woods. There was no chance. The point being is that if you're a family and you go to a national park or you go to the woods, that isn't a safe zone. It's a wildlife area. When I was living in Morrison, Colorado, just about 15 miles up further into the mountains towards Bailey, in fact, it wasn't in Bailey. A little boy was playing in his backyard and a mountain lion jumped him and grabbed him by his head and was dragging him away, and he was screaming, and his parents came out and beat the mountain lion, and it ran away. Folks, you got to be careful when you're out there. You do not let your children out of your sight. I've written too many stories where kids were standing right next to the parents and they disappeared. So on with this letter. Maybe it's just the father in me, but that case irritates me every time I see it. You would assume anyone, me, you, or any rational thinking person notices a tiny 3-year-old by himself in the wilderness, grabs him, and asks where his parents are. Duh. And you know, there were 2 fishermen. There wasn't just one. So I'm surprised that one of them didn't have a wave of common sense. I won't get into it, but next letter. Hey Dave, I love your content and the research you've done. I haven't seen the new movie, but definitely intend to. I'd like to discuss a theory I have in the background behind it. Now, I'm not identifying this person. I'm not trying to make fun of him, but you haven't watched our latest movie. Could it be possible that you're making some assumptions about a theory that maybe you should watch the movie first? Just saying. I've lived a lot of life, some of it, and some interesting subsets of culture. I'm the first one to admit that there are a lot of things to the general public simply does not have an understanding. Through mass media publications such as movies, I believe individuals over the years have done their best to express truths the best way they know how. I'll mention several references to this. The center of this theory is the iconic creature known as the Predator. You know, in Arnold Schwarzenegger's movie. The Predator is simply a hunter of hunters, best depicted in the most recent movie when the creature effectively moves its way through a food chain, eating one predator after another. In the movies, the creature has access to advanced technology, including the ability to travel to and from our planet, become invisible, manipulate the weather, among others. The account discussed in your movie from the deer hunter, seeing a translucent figure in the woods coinciding with the events from the school, I believe, are one example of this. The accounts for Missing 411 over and over again display characteristics that could be predation from a creature presented to us as the predator. Specifically, the weather events. In my opinion, these weather events coincide with the departure of the predator. I also acknowledge the spiritual nature of these matters, and the ancestral stories are not lost on me. In my opinion, one cannot simply disappear from the face of the earth. One may be removed from above or taken. Below, I cannot overstate enough that I do not believe a human can simply disappear. They have to go somewhere. This is where I will make a second movie reference. So hold on a second. Let me make a reference here. I've talked a lot about portals. When you say they can't disappear, what if they're taken by a portal? Boom, and gone. Isn't that disappearing? This is where I'll make a second movie reference. In the Chronicles of Riddick, we're exposed to a race of world enders called the Necromongers. This is one line in the movie that really sticks out to me in regards to the subject. You keep what you kill, for it is the Necromonger's way. And I'm done with the background. I'll get to the heart of my theory. I cannot say for sure that it is fact, but I do believe this is an extreme possibility. I'll also acknowledge that this may be partly true, as there's a lot of connections. I think it's a possibility that we made a deal with some other group, probably for technology. It's either involved a direct sacrifice or trade of human life, possibly something as simple as hunting rights. The easiest way to minimize this effect to the general public would obviously be to contain it in the national parks, and they were born. The national parks are clearly labeled, and in theory, human could walk into the park armed with whatever equipment they wanted. There are no firearm regulations outside of hunting, but the clearest thing to me is national parks are clearly marked with warnings. These warnings clearly and bluntly state that merely entering the park may be fatal. Don't know if I've seen that. Continuing this theory with some circumstantial evidence based on your research, if anything was hunting humans, there would be, in my opinion, the same signs you see with any other predator, meaning simply this. There will be old and wise. There will be young and stupid. There will have skills and processes thought and developed just as in any other predator. I believe these are clearly displayed based on the victims. Some are children, some are disabled, some are what would call exceptional humans. Any predator makes mistakes and has a learning curve. Stop right there. We have to be very careful when we start to theorize about what's going on. Personally, I don't know that this entity or whatever is going on has made any mistakes. None that I know of. But to impart human thinking, human empathy, human knowledge, common sense, on anything that may be outside of our realm is incorrect. I've heard researchers say that whatever is happening in our world may be from an entity that is so far stranger than anything we could ever imagine and has intentions that we could never, ever engage and understand. Any predator makes mistakes and has a learning curve. I believe the individuals found were taken and returned either because of an error in the process, such as a hunter missing a shot or accidentally targeting a female versus a male. The victim fought back and the creature was simply learning a process and only intended to capture or kill. Remember I said at the beginning of this letter, maybe this person should have watched this movie first before writing this, right? If you've actually read this, I'd be curious as to your thoughts on this theory. I've kind of been giving it to you along the way. I would like to leave you with this thought. As long as recorded history in North America has been around, there are stories of an elusive man-like creature known as Bigfoot. People often bring it up as the spiritual nature of this creature. The predator has the ability to do a lot of things chalked up to the spiritual nature of a Bigfoot. The associated lights and orbs could be associated with the craft or tools used by this creature. To sum up my theory, what if our national parks were hunting grounds for a creature known as Bigfoot? The catch is when Bigfoot hunts, he wears armor. This armor would turn Bigfoot into a creature known as the predator. Considering human hunters wear gear and use specific equipment, I do not think it's too much of a stretch for another intelligent creature to do the same. P.S. Not that I think you're in danger, but I do think you should note the government has a habit of eliminating problems. I fear your investigations may put you in this category at some point. Keep your social presence out there, as it may be the only thing keeping you alive. Wow. And definitely don't go into the woods alone. Whatever is going on, it's clear the powers to be want it to be kept quiet, and your voice may have put a target on your back. I hope Angie doesn't watch this segment. She gets nervous about that kind of stuff. Next letter. Hey Dave, I want to wish you and Angie a happy new year. Great UFO factual movie. We've watched it 4 times because it contains so many new nuggets of information to absorb. I can't think of another documentary with so many new details revealed in it. I read you guys a 1-star review on Amazon that I read the other day, and it said, "Nothing new here, nothing worth watching, old rehash of old stories." That's what it said. So I'm glad someone's telling the truth here. Thank you. One idea I had after watching the movie for the first time was, what if these are interdimensional entities? Then it makes sense as to why the UAPs are so interested in our nuclear weapons. Because the nukes are the only weapons that explode in our dimension as well as in all other dimensions that overlap with ours. Nuclear explosions are likely the only thing we do that cause interdimensional destruction. Who knows what we inadvertently destroyed in their dimension? I'm no physicist, but this makes sense because of the way nukes work, literally exerting such a force that breaks up atoms at the subatomic level, which makes up everything in our dimension and likely all in their overlapping dimensions. You should seek out some physicists and understand current theories about other dimensions and might know if this conjecture about nuclear explosions is a fact or not. It may be the key to understanding the increasing appearances of UFOs, USOs, etc. Perhaps it is us that open the portals when we use those weapons. Surely it would take an incredible amount of energy to do this. Are the associated Sasquatch hominids being seeded here to replace us ecologically, rebalancing Earth after our threat is eliminated? I don't think so. Just my own personal thought. Next letter. Hey Dave, I hope you, Angie, Huck, and your whole family are doing well. My thoughts and prayers are with you and your family about Ben. I know Ben was a huge catalyst in his vision with insight in regards to your work. Huge. Huge. I would not be here if it wasn't for my son. I would not. Your love for him pours through the screen. Thanks for all you do to discuss mental health. I have a lot of respect for you and all you do. You and I have corresponded a couple of times. I appreciate you even responding to me at all, considering the hundreds of thousands of emails you must receive in the midst of your loss of Ben. You and your team did an excellent job with Missing 411, the UFO connection. As I've mentioned to you before, I've had several paranormal experiences on my parents' farm, seeing crafts close and family land by a creek, saw an entity while hunting by a huge boulder that looked like the one in the Thomas Messick case in your Missing 411 Hunters film, 3 miles from the farm in a rural area 20 miles southwest of Rochester, New York. My experiences happened not far from the Joseph Alivato case you highlighted in Missing 411 Hunters in the Burgeon Swamp. I wanted to mention to you I was especially intrigued about the Wyoming cases in Missing 411, the UFO connection, because my grandfather was a staff sergeant in the Air Force in the 50s at Fort Warren in Cheyenne, Warren Air Force Base. He was in charge of teaching his men identifying enemy aircraft. I asked my dad if he knew the time frame, and he thinks he was there at least 2 years. He thinks it may have been 56 or a little before. My dad was born in Cheyenne in 56 before my grandpa was stationed at Fort Warren. He was stationed at Sampson Air Force Base near Kuka in upstate New York. Thank you for that. And thank you for Huck's getting mad. What happens is that she wakes herself up, I think, sometimes after she's taken a nap and just wants to know everyone around, hey, I'm here, I'm here. Ruff, ruff, ruff. Okay. This is kind of a funny story. I mean, I spent a lot of time researching cases. And when a specific case comes up, I look at as much history as I can around that area. And I run into strange stuff. That's all I can say. Well, I was doing some research on a case in southern Vermont. And I ran into the following story. And I think it's fascinating, and you will see why. This is in the Bellows Falls Times, August 16th, 1861. It says, Vermont News. Strange being in Stamford. The people of Stamford have become greatly exercised, that's what it says, about a strange being which they say exists among the mountains of their town. It appears that about 3 weeks since, according to the Banner, Curtis Wilbur of that town was hunting on the mountains east of Wilmarsh when suddenly he ran up to what he says was a large animal digging roots. Now, this is important, so I want you guys to get the full perspective out of it. This is the Vermont-Massachusetts border. This is Stamford. This is North Adams, Mass. So it's happening right on the border. First incident happened right in this area. Second incident, and I'll read it to you in a second, happened south of the border. So it was digging roots. He immediately fired upon it, but can't read it, obstinately hung fire, and the animal, aroused by this, raised itself up to the full size and stature of a man, completely covered with a coat of hair, from head to foot, and with a loud, startling yell, took to the woods. He was allowed to go unmolested, for Wilbur was so overcome by the strange apparition he had seen that he made no attempts to follow, but took leg bail from the spot instanter, and could not even be induced to return to the spot with a considerable number of citizens as a bodyguard. Pursuit was made the next day, and near the locality where Wilbur saw the object, human footprints were found. It is thought by those in the neighborhood that it is some crazy man who for a long time has wandered the mountains around there and until now escaped detection. This is undoubtedly the most practical solution to the matter. The Bennington Banner of last week has still further accounts and says that new developments have come to light respecting the mysterious being known to be wandering around Stamford and the vicinity. As stated last week, it was first discovered by Charles Wilbur, who in company with 2 Pierce brothers, hearing strange yells in the woods, set out with the determination to find out the origin. They advanced up the side of the mountain with 2 guns, but had not gone far when they encountered a creature all of 6 feet high, strikingly like a man, completely covered with long, coal-black hair from head to foot. Wilbur, it appears, was in advance, completely tried to fire at the animal, gathering roots in a stooping position, but his gun did not go off. I want you to remember that. Now, did that thing have some kind of special ability over even the guns that these guys had? The creature then rose up with a screech which drove Wilbur from the mountain in a hot haste. It soon met with Pierce boys, however, and one of them fired at it, but the shot fell wide of the mark, and he, being badly scared, together with his brother, turned and ran with all of his might. Wilbur has not been out of the house since after dark. A man named Sitterly woke up one night hearing a continued knocking at his door, and arising shouted to the visitant skulking away at a short distance, resembling strongly the unknown being. Also a party of berrying, going for berries, above Beaver Mill in North Adams were chased by the creature, which uttered incoherent articulations and put them all in flight. Later reports state a schoolmistress in Pownall was pursued by the same strange object, clothed in rags and making maniac motions. 16 men put after him, and one of them, overtaking him, was so paralyzed at the sight as to keep him from attempting his capture. It is also said a small cave has been found, thought to be the abode of the creature, and bones found thereabouts are to be sent to Amherst and Williams colleges for examination. Quite a number of sheep are missing in the mountains pastures, and some farmers say their cows have been milked in the night time by some unknown person. Many treat it as a humbug, but it is impossible for such a great number of persons to testify to tell the same lie with some accuracy, and we are inclined to treat it with seriousness. Whatever it is, it demands an immediate investigation and will doubtless receive it. A couple of things here. Bigfoot has been known to milk cows. True. So the idea that some creature out there is milking cows, yeah, I believe it, 100%. I probably have heard that 10 times. Here's a story for you. Harvey Pratt, his in-laws own a huge dairy cattle business. Huge. And Harvey's father-in-law has told him that a few times cows have come in, they've been milked, and their ranch is in the middle of nowhere. And this guy couldn't figure out how it happened, who did it, or when it was done. So I think it happens more than people want to admit. I think. So let's get to the cases. And there's a couple of very interesting ones that I'm going to talk to you about. First one centers on Rocky Mountain National Park. It's about 2.5 hours from Denver, in the mountains, right near the Continental Divide. And the gateway to Rocky Mountain National Park is Estes Park, Colorado. Estes Park is a small town that is just a gorgeous little town. Well, I'll say that. I've probably been there 50 times when I lived in Colorado. And I would say at least half the time there was a herd of elk in the downtown area. I'm not kidding you. They wander through the downtown area like they own the downtown. They are wild. Don't bother them. And it's impressive. Some of them are huge. So I always like going to Estes. Estes Park, Colorado. The story kind of centers on that. And the story has relevance to me because it involves somebody who has a doctorate in theology. Somebody who disappeared. Dr. Thornton R. Sampson, 63 years old. He went missing September 5th, 1915 in Rocky Mountain National Park. It's a story that I had never heard of. And I thought I heard all of them from that park. Well, Thornton was born in Virginia, and his father was a professor of Hebrew at the Union Theological Seminary. Thornton ended up going to the University of Virginia, graduated in 1873, and then he went to Europe to study abroad. Came back in 1878, he got married, and then he was ordained a minister. And he worked in that area for quite a while. In 1892, he traveled to Asia and studied in Japan, Korea, China, at various missions. 1894, he came back and became president of Fredericksburg College in Virginia. 3 years later, he moved to Texas and became president of Austin College. And then 3 years later, he became president of Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. What really hit me about this is that all the accounts I read in all of the newspapers talked about his love for the outdoors. And wherever he traveled in the world, he went into the woods and hiked. That's exactly what I would do. Well, he loved the mountains, and specifically he remembered hiking through the Alps in Austria, Italy, France, Switzerland. On August 7th, 1915, he and his wife went to Colorado on a long-planned trip. And they stayed several times in downtown Denver, and his wife actually stayed at a place called the Metropole Hotel in Denver. And she knew that her husband would want to go up into the woods, and that was fine. Well, on August 11th, he left his wife at the hotel and said that he'd be back on September 5th, and he was going to hike or travel up to Estes Park and then hike through the Rocky Mountain National Park, fishing. That was one of his loves, fishing. I heard that, I was all ears. Okay, I get this guy. On August 19th, he sent his wife a postcard from Rand, Colorado, stated he was staying there with a forest ranger. On the 28th, he hiked through Cameron Pass and said he felt great, stated he enjoyed the hike and was going to be fishing along the Colorado River in parts. September 2nd, he left an area intending to cross the Flat Top Mountains, a 16-mile trip that would eventually put him into Estes Park. Isn't that tough of an area? It's grueling, but it's not that tough. About 2 miles east of the spot, he met a guide on horseback that gave him absolute directions on how to get in, so he knew. He was last seen on September 3rd by 3 women and their guide, and they were hiking just east of Grand Lake, 1,500 feet below the Continental Divide. Let me put this together for you. So this is Grand Lake right down here. This is Cameron Pass. This man, Thornton, did a lot of hiking in those days. A lot. Came back through Flat Top Pass. This is Estes Park. Continental Divide. There's some big, big mountains in here, folks. Big. And this is the park right in here. If you ever get a chance, go to the west side of the park, Grand Lake. Absolutely gorgeous. And you cross the Continental Divide, and there's a dirt road that goes part of the way over the divide. You'll never forget it. You don't need a special car to do it. It's a pretty well-maintained road. You'll never forget it. It's gorgeous. Takes you over, I think, an 11,000-foot pass. Don't go there if you have breathing issues, but it's worth it. So on the 5th, Thornton was supposed to be back. He didn't arrive. But on the 4th, there was heavy snow that inundated the hiking area that he would have been in. Well, when he didn't come in on the 5th, wife waited a day, then called the park. They put together a search team. And they got 60 people, rangers, people from Estes together. And a couple days into it, the wife was getting a bad feeling, and she said, okay, I'm going to offer a $500 reward to find him, dead or alive. Well, that even pushed more people into the woods. One of the park rangers stated that there was a pretty good chance that as Thornton went over Flat Top Mountain, that he might have fallen into Odessa Gorge, which was in the area between Flat Top Mountain and Estes. You go off the side here, it's pretty thick and deep. It can be dangerous, but I don't see how it really, if you paid attention, how it could be. But they said, yeah, they're going to find him there. So the chief ranger took a whole team in there, and they searched for 4 or 5 days, didn't find anything. At those higher elevations, it's above tree line. There's nothing there. So 18 days of searching, they don't find anything. And for 1915, that's a long search. I was impressed. Park Service did a good job. They didn't find anything. There were strange allegations that during part of his hike, Thornton had been seen with what they called a queer, Q-U-E-E-R, not what we mean today. Queer meaning odd, strange. Seen hiking with a queer mountain man. And then, at about the time they were getting to terminate the search, 50 miles away, they find a body in an area of the mountains that had been mutilated pretty bad by bear and mountain lions. And at the time, there were some serious allegations that it might have been Thornton. But nobody could figure out how he'd get 50 miles away. He's a good hiker, but 50 miles. So eventually they ruled that out. But it made big press at the time. The chief park ranger at the time said he thought that Thornton probably got struck by lightning or had a heart attack. Those were the two choices. He was an older man for the time. Possible. It was an educated guess. And then every year after that, there were searches looking for him. A lot of researchers of the Odessa area never found anything. Now, fast forward 17 years. July 9th, 1932. A man named Meldrum Lucas from Fort Collins, just north of the park, was hiking near the bottom of Odessa Gorge, kind of between there and Bierstadt Lake. And he found a skeleton. And the skeleton had a broken left tibia. That's like the shin bone. And not far from there was like a big overhang. And down inside the overhang, this person found a pipe, some leather pieces, some tobacco, some matches, and some English-made flies that you used to go fly fishing, a watch, and a very frayed diary. Now this is the exact area that one of the people that were working with the Rangers said that he'd be found in. It's one of those areas that had been searched too many times to count. And he's found that in an exact area where someone would be under an overhang. Son of a gun, it turned out to be Thornton. It was one of the great mysteries of Rocky Mountain National Park, and it still is today, about how he wasn't found. Now, there were no answers about if he fell and broke his leg and died, or did he break his leg hiking and then survived a period of time? Because after 17 years, if he had started a fire there, probably wouldn't have been many remnants. Well, the family decided to intern his remains at the Fern Lake Trailhead inside the park. I actually want to go back and see if there's any monument there. Dr. Thornton or Sampson, a theological expert, PhD, a big man of the church. People always ask me, Dave, well, what's the relationship between church and the disappearances? And I keep telling people that there's a lot of people, a lot of individuals that were heads of churches that have disappeared. I'm talking more than 6 that I know of right off the top of my head. It's odd. So anyhow, that's that. Found in a location previously searched, found very near water. Fits the profile of the other theologians that have disappeared in a national park. So the next case. This one, another new case, brand new. Never heard of it before. Happened in Shasta County, California. Now, if you haven't watched it yet, I would say go on to Amazon and watch a show called Vanished. Put in the Amazon search bar Vanished, David Paulides, and you'll find it. It's a show owned by the History Channel. It's a 2-hour special I did for them on missing people. Part of the cases involved disappearances around Mount Shasta. Now this case happened in Shasta County, right around Shasta Lake. And I'm going to tell you that there's a lot of strange stuff that happens in that county. Lots. Well, Alton Lynn was 63 years old. He went missing November 16th, 1971. He suffered from emphysema. He never walked far. His friend said that he had trouble breathing at times, so he didn't go very far. He spent his winter months in Tehama County in the San Joaquin Valley, which would have been just south of where he was at. And his profession was he trained dogs to hunt. And during the summer months, he stayed at his cabin near Bully Hill Mine, just on the northern side of Shasta Lake. Show you where that is. So this is Shasta Lake, right through here, all the different arms of it. Right here is Highway 5, a giant bridge that crosses the lake right here, goes north up to Mount Shasta. On a good day, you can see Mount Shasta from right here. And then Shasta Caverns are right here. This is where the incident happened, near Bully Hill. But Shasta Caverns, you ever up in Northern California, especially during the summer months, looking for something to do, go to Shasta Caverns. It's a very cool trip. Very cool. I've been there 2 or 3 times. Fascinated every time I go. So anyhow, Alton had a summer cabin kind of near the Bully Hill Mine area. And he'd stayed there for decades during the summer. Knew the area like you know your backyard. He was considered one of the best outdoorsmen in the area. So on November 9th, he had a friend that stopped by his cabin, check on him. And nobody was there. A friend left a note. Thought, well, he must be hunting, and left. A different friend comes on November 11th, sees the note on the table, sees that nobody's been there, and starts to get suspicious. So rather than just leaving, he starts driving the roads in the area, and he finds Alton's 4x4 truck with his dogs in it about a quarter mile from the cabin. And laying across the front seat of the truck is Alton's shotgun. So think about this scene. You're his friend. He's a hunter. He's got his dogs. There's his shotgun. Think about that for a second. Well, the friend that was there was smart. Looks around, sees if there's other tracks in the area. Doesn't see any. It had rained the day before real heavily, so everything would seem to be wiped out. Couldn't find any tracks leaving the area like where maybe Alton walked away. Friend calls the sheriff. Sheriff comes out, and the dogs are starving, needing water. They feed the dogs, get them water. And the sheriff and the local U.S. National Forest Rangers call the Crystal Creek Conservation Camp, about 20 miles away. And they send 50 inmates out to help with the search. And altogether, they get about 100 searchers out there. It was intensive, and it was organized, and it lasted 7 days. Because the sheriff and the friends knew Alton wasn't going to go far. He had emphysema. They said he might get out of his truck and he might walk 100 yards and that'd be it. And he wasn't going to take any uphill routes. He was going to take the easiest path as he could. And nothing. And then there were searches off and on by his friends around that cabin for the next 6 months. Well, then in April 1972, there was a public notice in the local newspaper about Alton and his disappearance, saying that he still hadn't been found, and it was still a mystery, and they were going to assign a court administrator to get rid of his remains, meaning his public property. So in studying missing people cases, I can tell you of 4 or 5 cases that are very similar to this. They come, you know, somebody comes across a truck in the middle of a road, the door's open, keys are in the ignition, hunter's gone, rifle's gone, person's gone, truck's just there. Now in the Alton's case, he knows the value of his dogs, highly trained hunting dogs. So if he had stopped his truck and gotten out because he saw a bear or whatever, he would have taken a shotgun. That's right, Dave. The only thing I was thinking, and I could be wrong on this, but if he was going to get out and maybe have lunch or something, he'd get his dogs out. If he was going to, because they're well trained, they're going to stay with him. If he was going to get out and hunt, he'd get his dogs out. But if he was going to go out, and let's just say he was going to use the bathroom, probably leave the dogs in, leave the shotgun there. Now, if he saw something that was so scary, and him being a hunter, he knew that that shotgun isn't going to be worth anything against what he just saw, and he was afraid that what that thing could do to his dogs, I don't know that he would get out. But maybe he did to get a better look. I don't know. It's one of those scenarios that's really racked my mind for the last couple of weeks, thinking, what could be at play? Whatever is around that area, a quarter mile from his cabin, may have been harassing him at the cabin. And maybe he left to go follow it. I don't know. But Alton's never been found. They disposed of his cabin and his personal property. That area where he disappeared, whew, remote. Very remote. Not a lot of action up there at all. I spent my youth, from the time I was 10 to the time I was 25, around a town kind of between where this happened and Mount Shasta, at a small town called Dunsmuir. Dunsmuir is an old railroad town that sits right on the Sacramento River. And so many times, my aunt and uncle and my family would go up to Dunsmuir, rent some cabins, and fish for 3 or 4 days on the Sacramento. We always caught tons of fish, always. And then we'd go to the McCloud River, about 30 miles away, fish that. Suffice it to say that at the time, Dave was really not very keen on what was going on around him. But since that time, and since I spent an inordinate amount of time understanding Mount Shasta, that area starting at Shasta Dam, Shasta Reservoir, and going north, whew, lots of strange things. UFOs, Bigfoot, everything you could think of that's weird is in that area. Now, Thornton disappeared probably no more than 1.5 miles from one of the biggest arms at Shasta Reservoir. So water was right nearby. Now that area, in the summertime, gets really hot. It could be over 100 degrees. Now in November, you just have to be careful because it can snow really hard and get in there and you can get stuck easy. But that fall time, prime time hunting deer. And I'm sure that's what Alton, that's the implication for everybody that he was hunting deer then. Probably, to be honest, road hunting. He had emphysema, drive the roads, look for a deer, get out and shoot it. That's my guess. But another hunter that vanished, never found. Even after a huge, huge search effort. So that's the stories for today. Hopefully you enjoyed the story from Vermont about the strange things seen by other hunters. And that's the thing. When hunters are out in the woods, how are they going to respond if they saw something like that? And that's why I read you that. Now, some hunters shot at this thing that even looked human. Others tried to shoot and their gun wouldn't go off. I've been asked a million times, Dave, would you shoot? There's not a chance in heck I would ever shoot at that. No way. No way. Too many times I've read that people wouldn't shoot because it looked too human. And they'd look at it through a scope. Not a chance. Knowing what I know about the DNA, hey, I believe it's one of us. A little different. Quite many more abilities than us. And maybe from the sky above, something we just don't understand. But in the meantime, our website, NABigfootsearch.com, like North America, bigfootsearch.com. You can get the DVDs and the Blu-rays to this from our website store. And you can watch this online right now in North America on iTunes, Vimeo, and Amazon. So, again, our website, NABigfootsearch.com. Do not buy my books from Amazon or eBay or anywhere. You're going to get ripped off. They're going to charge you 3 times the value. Right now, I saw one today for $199 on Amazon. You can buy it from me for $24.99. Yeah. People are ripping it off. So, I'm sorry. But in the meantime, do something nice for your community. Be nice to yourself. You see somebody in distress, pull over and help. If you're in the store and you see some older person or someone with a disability, help them. Help them. We need to be a community that assists others at a time of great need. Thanks for being here. Paulides out.